Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption.
Hey everybody, how are you guys doing tonight? Militiaman and Crew here. We're going to get started. We have some really good stuff to go over. I think if everybody's been paying attention to the news, it's been kind of intense. So let's pay attention to what happened today in the courts. The courts have ruled that they have made decisions, and in those decisions, al-Sudani has things to do. I think others will have to follow. The salaries will have to be paid. I think that everybody knows that a lot of the things that we've talked about, they were financing the salaries. They have to now distribute those salaries, and I think they need to take them from the 24-25 budget because it's a tripartite budget. But they got to finish up with the 2023. They have to do some other things. I'll get to that, but in the meantime, I think this little one's going to have to let me get busy. So give me just 1 second. You going to get involved with this too? How cool is that? Oh, she's a whippet. Hey, just to back up just a little bit, kitty cats are involved, but I need to just get the whole thing straight. Is that we can go back a couple more hours a day almost, but it says today that though, in my view, they have a problem with liquidity, and I think we saw that the other day. They came out and said that the health ministry basically told us that, hey, Tafe Sammy, finance ministry, says there's no money. Health minister says, well, we can't fuel our ambulances. That's a safety concern. So that's added pressure. So this particular article goes on. It's called "The Source Reveals," quote, Telka, end quote, salary distribution due to a lack of cash in Iraq. It says in this particular case, it says they give excuses in respect to the United States Federal Reserve Bank and so forth. But here it says the exchange process exceeds days and weeks due to the lack of financial liquidity and the decline in sources of funding by the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. He goes on to say that the lack of arrival of dollar payments to Iraq causes delays in the payment and distribution of salaries, in addition to affecting the economic situation in the country. So they go on to say that the Ministry of Oil supplies the central bank with monthly financial revenues. We all know that from the crude exports in the currency of the U.S. dollar. And so what happens next is that it's sold to the bank, and in turn with the market and local currency, and then transfers it to the Federal Ministry of Finance to basically finance the salaries of state employees and members of the security forces and so forth. And effectively those who receive retirements, those who recover from social welfare network, they need their money. So yesterday, which was Tuesday, I think that's correct, Prime Minister al-Sudani says in a press conference that despite the lack of financial liquidity, so he's agreeing that I guess Tafe Sammy shut him off, he made decisions to increase allocations for minimum salaries, confirming the amendment of decisions on the salary scale later. So how is it that you can't pay for fuel for your safety and security of your country, for ambulances, for instance? He is saying here that despite the lack of financial liquidity, he's making a decision to increase allocations for minimum salaries. So if you can't pay for something now, how are you going to increase the salaries? Key point. Okay, so we'll move forward, but you can read between the lines. The Iraq Ministry of Finance announced on Tuesday the start of the measure to finance the salaries of the state. They're going to finance? How are you going to finance? What you're going to do is borrow? Again, keep that in mind. It just doesn't sound like they're making any sense. You can't do things like that. And we're going to find out, because of the court decision that we talked about a few minutes ago, has probably some bearing on that. To me, what it was looking like, this is a squeeze play for what? There's a lack of liquidity to be able to even pay for fuel, pay salaries, That low liquidity is, to me, it's just pressure, immense pressure. Or could it have been a stall tactic to be talking to the people because of what? Al-Sudani, Taif Sami, everybody was waiting for a court decision. Just, these are things to think about. It's coming from the news. I told you the article title. I don't make it up. It's phenomenal, you guys. Al-Sudani makes comments on U.S. sanctions. We will not abandon the private banking sector. Okay, so we're just going to go through a few things, but Prime Minister Sudani confirms that there was observations about the U.S. Treasury sanctions on Iraqi banks, indicating that the government would continue to support the private banking sector. So Al-Sudani is geared, ready to be able to take care of their private sector. We all know that some of these private sector bankings had problems, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So it sounds like they're buying time for these banks to be able to facilitate trade. And we're going to get into in more depth in that, because look, they don't want to tarnish the banks' names. It doesn't look good for the citizens to have trust. So they're giving the banks that aren't on these platforms and not playing by the rules as much time as they can possibly give them to do so. And I think they're even incentivizing them because of the interest that they're paying for commissions. They were at 0.002%, and I think the central banks increased that to 0.003%. And I think you can go to the CBI's website and find that to be true. Here, this article basically says that the government has made important strides in making Iraq's trade clear, despite the challenges that appear from time to time. It says today, all of our trade passes through the electronic platform, and through that, the audit, keyword is the audit of the K.TU. I don't know what the translation of that is or what that's supposed to mean, but the bottom line is audit is important, because we already know, and we've been told, and I'll show that here later on, that there is a auditing process that is going to get started as far out as March 31st. Now, don't jump to conclusions. You need to have things done long before you have an audit, because of the first quarter ends on the 31st. They need to have things done and sorted long before that. They actually have time frames that coincide with things like we talked about, the WTO, right? They have specific timelines. I put some things in Patreon. I pinned articles the last couple of days. Those that have understood and paid attention to those pins show that the documentation that we have in Patreon is supporting all of the work that I've been talking about for a long time. A long time is relatively new in comparison to some others out there giving out information. The nice part about it is, thank you so much for all of you that have been supporting us. We went over 40,000 subscribers, and we've done that collectively in about a year, a little bit more than that. And why is that important is because if you go back in history and you go back in time and you can see some of the things that we've been talking about, it's a collective, and it shows that when you go back in time, you go, wow, we talked about this, and wow, this happened. So some of those things, I'd like everybody out there to keep that in mind when we're talking here. When we talk about truth, no, we're talking about real data, real articles. Okay, we're not talking about other people's opinions. We're talking about an opinion of mine and our crew for what the government and what the political blocs and what the United States and everybody's talking about. So take that into consideration while you're studying, because I think you'll be misguided if you don't pay attention, and if you don't do your own research. You're suspect to having many ups and downs when they're not really necessary, because this data is very concurrent. It's in primarily a chronological order, and it's consistent with integrity even. So thank you guys for being with us. Here we go. It says during the current period, hold on, back up. It says today, we did the financial transfers that are all documented. So the government's talking about that they have that ability to document all the transactions. The Prime Minister basically says that during the current period, financial transactions and transfers of Iraqi trade pass through a clear electronic platform in front of financial institutions, which is why this process has gained reliability. International standards require transparency. They require reliability. So effectively, that's what al-Sudani has basically stated. It says the government continues to support the private banking sector, and it cannot be abandoned. So he's not going to let them go. He's telling them, giving them encouragement. We're working to address all observations in performance. In other words, they know who's performing and who's not performing, and improve it so that it can be a partner with us for the desired development process in the country. So those banks that haven't been up to snuff, they have the opportunity to get up to snuff. I would highly suggest them do so, because they might find themselves in a circumstance in a very short period of time out of a job and or arrested. I don't know. But anyway, here's something in my view. I wrote that al-Sudani has done thus far, what he's done is truly amazing. Those private banks that are not yet in compliance, they have been and are still being given opportunity to be on board, like I just mentioned. Previous governments, he goes back on to say, previous governments were allowing the theft of massive amounts of money. That is no longer. It's going to dry up. And this is likely why, on good faith, that the UN Assembly meetings that we've talked about in the past were successful. And they had powerful statements about Iraq's future in what? Restoring confidence. Remember the Davos meetings? That was their headline for the whole meeting, was restoring confidence. We talked about that. They were restoring confidence to what? To the global financial system and with the largest banks in the world, JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, etc. To that, right? We've heard these bank stories that people talk about. We've heard those in the past, 2016, 2018. We have bank stories. Well, to be fair, the fact remains is, in Patreon, we have article after article after articles that show that JP Morgan and other banks, key banks around the world, central banks included, are invested and involved with Iraq doing this. And so to think that we're just making things up is ludicrous. The bottom line is that banks do talk sometimes. Sometimes they probably speak too quickly. I think in this particular case, they started to do so. But have they really truly spoke too soon? No, because we go back almost a year or so, we saw that the vice president of the JP Morgan Chase visited Al-Alaq in Baghdad. Where do you find it? Patreon. You can find it all. By the way, there's a compilation of work that I did the other night for our Discord chat room. I think I knocked their socks off. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I was even impressed rereading some of the things that I did in the collection that we put together with JP Morgan included in all the different articles and the compilation of how many there are. I think you guys should take a look at it, because you're going to have a whole different view of the banks know what we're talking about. Should they be talking about it? Probably not. Why? Because the IQD is not on the FX just yet. They got to be careful. Were they? I don't think so. But we reported what we heard. That's all we did, was report it. We didn't make it up. Okay? So thank you very much for all your guys' inquiries and all those questions I had to answer, that extra time we took. I hope you appreciate it and get something out of it. The next thing is that the Strategic Framework Agreement, right? Do you guys understand what a Strategic Framework Agreement is? It is an agreement between Iraq and the United States of America. In Patreon, if you come to this article, it says al-Sudani discusses the U.S. ambassador, the files of this upcoming visit to Washington. So all of a sudden they have a court case, and then all of a sudden today they talk about strategic frameworks on the table. But let's just get into a little bit of that. It says Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, ambassador to Iraq, Alina Romanowski. They're talking about the relations and how to strengthen them with bilateral dialogues, military committees, et cetera, international coalitions. Okay, they're all talking about that. They're getting to the point where the files that will be presented during the upcoming visit of the Prime Minister to Washington, so they're saying they're coming. The cooperation mechanism with the Strategic Framework Agreement between Iraq and the United States and the committees formed in this regard. It's pretty basic. They don't tell you all the time. They don't tell you what time they're going to be here. They just tell you all of a sudden, boom, it's on the table. Right, because if you go to the strategic framework, in the consulate's website, I believe it is. I think that we have a PDF file that you can click on in Patreon. It just says that the Strategic Framework Agreement for the Relationship of Friendship and Cooperation between the United States and the Republic of Iraq, and there is a full version, so I'm not wrong. There is a text, I think you can click on it. Guides overall political, economic, cultural, and security ties with Iraq. Okay, you get that. And what are we talking about? Security and stability, big business, some of the biggest business in the world. They've come out and told us that the Development Road Project is a big project, but they also said the other day, I think it could have been 2 days ago, that it is the largest project now on the plate in the world. So take it for what it's worth. You think you're going to be able to do the largest projects in the world at an exchange rate that's 1,310 to the dollar? Good luck. So here are some things that we talked about too, is that we know that there's some time frames. We posted in our room, we talked about in our room, when I mean the forum and I mean that in Discord, is that our dear Samson, Super Samson, our news professional that we have up with us, she's just knocks it out of the park all the time, and got a snippet from the WTO that talked about specific time frames, and they started from the 19th, which was 2 days ago. And if you go to the calendar, you'll find that the calendar shows that the 19th to the 25th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th are on there. But the 19th to the 23rd, I believe it is, are just empty. But they sent it out. The 24th is the 12th China Roundtable on WTO accessions. It starts the 24th through the 25th, which I believe is Saturday and Sunday. And I think the 19th to the 23rd is from Monday through Friday. And the WTO shows no comment for those days. Okay. You can look that up. But the MC13 is supposed to happen between the 26th and through the 29th. So when you go to their calendar, you can see what they talk and how they describe it. It takes a little bit of studying, quite a bit of studying, to figure out exactly what some of their acronyms mean. There's people out there that do a good job, and kudos to those that know what they're talking about. It goes on to say that this meeting with the Arab region is one of the most underrepresented in the WTO. They talk about the number of members, 22 members of the Arab League, which 13 members and or only 9 observers in that category, 9 observers. Iraq, I posted, that's why I pinned one of my articles that showed specifically that Saudi Arabia helped Iraq with about 15 years of negotiations in 1 year, and shows specifically black and white that Iraq is now then when that came out, they stated was an observer. I believe that what happens after being an observer, you have the ability to have a session. Am I waiting for them to have a session before they have an exchange rate? No, I'm not. But the fact is that they're getting to that stage shows that the world's expectation is that we can see now with this law that's been not breached, but decisions have been made, give us the impression that the cat's out of the bag, and that's on them. That's not on us. And then again, maybe those banks that were talking a little bit too quickly at the private management level, and they got inundated with people coming in and asking all these different questions and now denying it. I think they may be able to rest tonight, because I think that what the federal court did was gave them, I don't know, carte blanche to start talking again. So let's see how that goes. But here it says that through this WTO Article 12, people ask me questions, is that considered similar to Article 4, Article 8 of the IMF? And the answer is no, they're totally different. Article 12 is specifically about accession. In our room, I put data that shows that you can find that Article 12, 1, 2, and 3 specifically talks about accession. And so what are they talking about? They're talking about here for this China Roundtable, stepping up the engagement of the WTO this year. They've already started with 2 different countries. In the case of Comoros, I think it was Timor-Leste. They got started with them first this year in a session. Are there going to be more? Of course, there's going to be more. It sounds like they've taken. Well, all these countries that have been pursuing this have been doing it for about 20 years. So let's just see how it flows and works out. It goes on to say that they have studies to aim to provide factual accounts of past and ongoing accessions, as well as post-accession performance of Article 12, Arab members, It's a good article. It's 12th China Roundtable on WTO accessions. Notice that Iraq is involved in that. My belief is that Iraq is an observer. There is a easy central bank. If you Google anything about the WTO, you can find out what is this. In this particular case, it's something that was started. The central bank lettered an address to 2 banks for the purpose of organizing financing operations for requirements to enhance external balances. So this is important for the central bank, because it says that back to the quote of the title of the article, it says, the Central Bank of Iraq decided to restore the mechanism for financing Iraq's foreign trade starting March. That's March 1st, 2024. But keep in mind, this is important, he added that banks wishing to enhance their balances with correspondent banks, remember the correspondent banks, they're going to dry up the auctions. They're going to get rid of the electronic platform. They don't have any liquidity. They're telling the banks that you have to be able to only use the dollars that you own now. Okay, dollar auctions dropped, 11 million in cash. They're getting rid of it. Add that into your equation. It was decided to implement the new requirements in the mechanism starting from March 1st. So something has to happen prior to that, correct? I would think so. He adds that the banks wishing to enhance their balances with correspondent banks in all currencies, those correspondent banks had many different currencies. What was it? The yuan, the yen, the Emirati dirham, the euro, the US dollar was included. There's many different currencies that were included. To be able to do trade legally through what? Electronic platform or correspondent banks. In this particular case, I think they're going straight with the correspondent banks to do trade. It says correspondent banks in all currencies should appoint an external auditor. Oh, the auditors, right? Didn't we read and see that there was 13 auditing companies, the largest in the world? They have to be ready for the paperwork to land on their desk by when? The end of March, when the quarter's over? Right, so what do they have to do? They have to have all that accounting done from 2023 to present. Today, they talked about paying the salaries. Well, they didn't pay salaries without financing. They're going to have to pay that. That means they have to, means they have to open the budget from 2023. It's just powerful information. But here at the end, it says any of those sending transfers, but banks wishing to enhance the balance must provide us with information about the names of the companies they wish to contract with within a maximum period of February 29, 2024. Now, that's an interesting day. The last day of the month. What's on the last day of the month? Well, if we go back to the WTO session, what do we have? We have that same time frame. The MC13 for the WTO for integration and other things for members is from the 26th through the 29th of this month. These dates are what they're saying. This is not me making it up. This isn't other Dinarians out in the Dinar world. It is what's coming from real live, real data. And I'll get to the next thing here, but this is powerful. This is really going to be a good one that we're going to talk about. It's kind of short and sweet, but it's called the Federal Court Issues Decisions Regarding the Salaries of the Kurdistan Region Employees. This is why everybody's pretty pumped today, and everybody should be, rightfully so. So the federal Supreme Court issued its decisions in the Kurdistan region salary case. In its session held today, the court promised, quote, delaying and withholding the salaries of the Kurdistan region constitutes a violation of rights and violates Article 30 of the first of the Constitution. So they're invoking the Constitution. What they're going to come out with is binding. They're obligated to take care of this. The federal court decided to oblige, key word, binding, oblige, right? Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government, and Misrar Barzani to what? To settle the salaries of the Kurdistan region employees with government banks and deduct them from the region's budget for this year and coming years. So it's going to be obligatory, binding. The federal court also, another item, also obligated, another same word, to Sudanese to release fundings for the region's salaries after they are settled and released through the monthly financial funding. So in the future, they're going to have to do it on a monthly basis. It also decided to oblige, again, binding, the region to hand over its oil and non-oil revenues to the federal state treasury, and it's obligated that the regulatory authorities to audit the data of the Kurdistan employees. So in other words, they're going to have to pony up the money for the oil, the Kurds, non-oil revenues, borders, taxes, tariffs, all that stuff, got to be ponied up. And another thing is, it's binding by law now. There's no appeals, that the Kurds have to be audited for their employees. So anybody that was getting paid 3 or 4 salaries a year or month, however they paid them, they cannot do that anymore. So is this huge? Of course it's huge. It's massive. To me, this sounds like the stage is set and the curtain's about to rise, because having obligation and binding audits, those 13 audit companies, they're the largest in the world. I've talked to people that know for a fact, because they worked for 2 of the largest ones. Okay, so pay attention. But this one's the federal court issues decisions on the salaries of the Kurdistan region employees, and all that right there, I'm telling you, take a snapshot of it. Love it. Love it. And what is that going to do for us? That basically going to do is the federal court's decision will what? It will accelerate the legislation of the oil and gas. So they are acknowledging it's going to accelerate the oil and gas law. What is that going to help for? That's going to help the citizens, is it not? Oil and gas law is going to help the revenue stream, non-oil, oil, gas, all the things that go towards the unified treasury account. I think everybody has a good understanding, if they've been around long enough, to know that this isn't 20 years ago. This is real time now. It's not 15 years ago. We have not ever seen what we're seeing today. So dust off your poker chips, because you're going to need them. Here's this. Federal court decision, accelerate the legislation of the oil and gas law. The Kurdistan Party basically confirms Wednesday that the decisions of the federal Supreme Court handing over the region's oil and revenues and border crossings to the central government, while stressing that the decision to localize salaries is dangerous and in the right direction. I'm not sure why it's dangerous, but they need to do it. It goes here, it says, the court's decision related to handing over the region's oil revenues will contribute to accelerating the legislation of the oil and gas law, noting that the federal court's decision were basically directly on legal and constitutional articles. And we already saw that I think it was article number 30. Federal court will achieve the principle of justice between all parties through the decisions issued earlier today. So they did this today. It says the federal court took into account ending the suffering of the region's employees. So they're looking out for the citizens. I think Al Sadr was out today talking about getting rid of corruption again. And so who was taking those employees' salaries? I won't point any fingers, but I think everybody knows who it was. The decision of the federal Supreme Court are final and binding on all parties. That word's been used tonight, but here I got evidence of it, stressing that the national union's support for the federal court in all the decisions that were issued today. And then they even go on to say there's going to be some stuff that comes out here shortly about the Electoral Commission to supervise the elections. But here you have it, you guys. This article right here is talking about all the things I said: obligations, obligated, oblige, and what? Binding. They don't have any money and no liquidity. They're going to have to do what? Open the budget and pay. I think you guys ought to just really just like, oh, wow, this is intense. Is it heavy? Of course it is. Well, who's happy? Well, I think some of the people that are in the streets probably in Kurdistan are probably going to start being really happy. Here it says, joy and optimism. The Kurdish popular circles after the localization of the salaries in the federal banks. So it goes on to say the federal courts today, Wednesday, back to the word obligation. It says that regarding the localization of the salaries of the Kurdistan region employees in federal banks, as well as obligating Baghdad and Erbil to pay their salaries. So in other words, Baghdad has to be involved, Erbil has to be involved. They're not getting out of it. It's binding. If you don't do it, you can go to jail. So we're going to have to watch and see how this goes. And once again, take a snapshot. It says all decisions are binding on all authorities. I love this, man. You guys, it's great. The federal court's decision is final and binding on all authorities, so the regional government is obligated to implement it. They go on to say the decision will have positive repercussions on all aspects of life in the affected Kurdistan region, and there are sectors that have disappeared due to the salary crisis. Hopefully they'll come back due to the national government saving salaries and delaying their disbursement. Well, of course, you pinch somebody long enough, private sector stuff, merchants and stuff, they just go away. So anyway, what are they looking at doing? Well, they're talking about being able to, in the future here, or real shortly, become stable. They'll have stability and they'll be able to buy things like what? They go off to say first things, luxury items. How are they going to get their money? How are they going to get their salaries? They're going to use the MasterCard. It says the localization of salaries in federal banks is very important because the employees in Kurdistan will enjoy the same privileges that the employees in the central and southern governments enjoys, including loans, purchasing cars, installments, and others. And they go on to say it'll also reflect on the return of life to the real estate market, industry, investment in general. Remember what Al-Sudani said a couple days ago? They said that they were going to be in a transitional stage to do what? It's in my video. It says they're going to be in a transitional stage to help support global economies. As Petra says, MMC crew member, all boats rise with the tides. To be able to support global economies, what did JP Morgan say? They said that Iraq was going to be the savior, effectively, of the financial system, the global financial system. So when you go into a bank in the future, I would highly suggest wait until after the FX hits with the IQD on it. But just let you know, facts remains is it's nothing new. These banks, the Buna platform, all of it's in Patreon with Militiaman and crew, and it's fact. Last thing I'm going to do before we close out, it says that there's an article called The Parliamentarian. It's the diversity of currency accounts for 20% of Iraq's foreign trade. What I'm going to do is read a few things just to back you guys up a little bit, because what happens is it comes to today. But the bottom line is if you go back in time, you have back on October 24th, quote, the central bank has come a long way in its mission to restore market stability, get rid of the dominance of the dollar, strengthen the Iraqi dinar, bring it in line with the global commercial transactions. What's that tell you? The commercial transactions in Iraq are going to be in the dinar. They're talking about strengthening the dinar. They're talking about that even today. But here, a month or so later, 12/26, 2023, it says, thus at the beginning of the 2024 year, Iraq will have entered the rapidly advanced digital era, and there will be a major official announcement in this regard. I've been talking about this. Have we seen that major announcement yet? I don't know. I think we've seen some lead in. I mentioned it the other day. They talk about specific key points. I think there were 6 principles specifically that we talked about. You can find it. We have it. I know for it. It's almost there. January 12, 2024. It says strategy to enhance confidence in the banking sector. Isn't that what we talked about when al-Sudani was in the UN Assembly? In the this year, they talked about enhancing or restoring confidence in the global world. That was the headline for the Davos conference. It says here that the new strategy to enhance confidence explained by the governor of the central bank on 1/11/2024 will depend on the following. First, improve the level of banking services and products provided to customers. Second, the availability of the bank's financial solvency and its ability to meet customers' requests at the time of request without delay. And I'm going to jump to the fourth, which is provides external international confidence in the bank through its ability to adhere to international standards and obtain confidence from correspondent banks. The correspondent banks, those are the guys that are going to be funding everything. You have to own your own dollars, okay? That stuff's powerful, and we'll go to the last thing. They had to increase the capital of banks, and they had to do that by when? February 15th, 2024. What's the date today? Today's the 21st. And they're moving forward, and the article comes out on the 29th. They have to pay and open the budget. I think you guys better get excited. It's pretty cool. What happened yesterday? The deputy governor of the central bank, Amar Hamad Khalif, said in an interview followed by a news agency, it says the Central Bank of Iraq is heading to cancel work on the electronic platform. Why? Because they're going to go to the correspondent banks. All right. The banks will be responsible for financing foreign trade directly through the dollars they own. Right? So in other words, they're not going to get any more dollars. If you're going to finance anything, you have to use the dollars that you own, all banks. So in other words, anybody going to be doing business, each bank will have to have what they own for that respective trade. So, quote says the banks will be responsible for financing foreign trade directly through the dollars that they own, and they will be fully responsible for auditing invoices. So those auditors come back into play, auditing invoices and transfers, with which is the practice globally. And who are they using? The largest global entities in the world to do so. He goes on to say that American correspondent banks will be responsible for financing the requests of these banks among themselves after reviewing the private documents. Basically, everything on that side. Well, back up to a little bit. The Iraqi Dinar had correspondent banks in global currency that was dealt with in the field of global trade. And here the demand for it will become higher and the value of the dinar will rise. So this was another article that was done on the, not on the 12th, but it was the 14th, forgive me. And what they talked about here, we've already had, it's old news, but the bottom line is, it says most banks are currently engaged in smuggling operations, which is going to cease with the new platform situation with the correspondent banks, according to the United States Treasury Department, and they confirm it. It says another item is that can help with this process is deleting the zeros to control the rise in the value of numbers in monetary transactions. And again, they invoke the deleting of the zeros. And that comes from the exchange rate, not from the currency. Stop with that. Thank you. Stabilizing the currency and revitalizing local industry and agriculture in general will lead to solving all the economic and currency problems. The local currency printed by the state gives its value in exchange for other currencies such as gold, other metals, global supply, and demand in the marketplace. There you go, everybody. I think that what we presented tonight is kind of fast and furious, the best that I could, and understand that what al-Sudani has to do now, what Taif Sami has to do now, al-Alaq have to do, they're going to have to do what they are binding. They're going to have to pay the salaries, effectively open the budget, disperse monies for the contracts for 2023, and reconcile the books into 2024, and so they can move forward, because the 24-25 portions are part of a tripartite budget, which is about investment. And so they have basically come out and told us this is on the table. It's on the table now. They don't tell you when, but all of a sudden I did tell you that the WTO stuff is tracking quickly. And so let's just see if Iraq decides to, or if the world wants them and they're ready. Iraq's an observer. Next step, accession. See how it goes. Thank you for your time. And by the way, if you like my content, watch it follow up through the end and into the future. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget that all your donations help keep this going. Little, small, large, they keep us going. Zelle, Venmo, and PayPal.
Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content. Subscribe to the channel or join us at the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much and have a great day.